There's a big scandal right now in Canada that I think has the potential to pull in players from different regions of the world, so everybody might want to pay attention. It's about this thing called We Charity. It used to be called Free the Children. It's also called the We to Me charity. It's also called the We to Me Foundation and the We Foundation and a bunch of other things. We 365, Keel Incorporated, a bunch of things. As usual, it's a rat's nest of interconnected limited liability companies, for-profit companies, foundations, etc. It is the model that some people call philanthrocapitalism, and that's what we're living through today. And I'm going to be talking about the We Charity thing here, but I'm not going to give an overview of what the mainstream media have already talked about, which is that our government gave them a sole source $920 million contract to work specifically with youth. I'm not going to talk about the fact that our finance minister is drawn into this, Bill Morneau, and I'm not going to talk about the real estate holdings that look pretty shady on the part of the Kielburger family in general, including the two guys' parents. What I am going to do is give you an overview of how this thing is like a cult and how it has this unbelievable twist at the end if you follow the tentacles all the way through. That's what I'm going to do in this. I'm going to show you some of the things that came up during my research that don't necessarily relate directly to the current We scandal, but are connected in that grand way that I like to present. So first of all, Craig and Mark Kielburger are the faces of We. And what they really are, I think, what especially Craig likes to think of himself as, is a motivational speaker. And they target grades kindergarten to grades 12 mostly. That's who they target everything to, and they have these big educational packages that they give out for free to the schools, and the schools actually use them. And of course, they're all about social justice and communitarianism, basically. Basically, it's training kids to stop thinking of themselves and think of the community, to sacrifice themselves and their wants and their desires for the good of the whole, the greater good. Sounds pretty communist, doesn't it? Well, these guys are a huge sensation. I don't have a kid in that age group, so I've been missing out. But they are rock stars. And I mean, look at the types of people they rub elbows with. Here's Hillary Clinton. This is from back when they first started. There they are with Hillary. Here's Prince Harry and Meghan Markle at a more recent We event. Here is Prime Minister Trudeau and his wife Sophie speaking at a We event back in the past. Here is Martin Sheen and Mia Farrow. Here's Craig with the Dalai Lama. Here's Craig with Mother Teresa. Here's a more recent one with Richard Branson. Here's Steve Forbes speaking on their behalf. But the big booster of We Charity back when it was called Free the Children was Oprah Winfrey. This, I think, is in 1999. And it wasn't until Oprah came on board that the thing truly exploded. However, things were happening for them before that. They had political connections. They met right with our Prime Minister Jean Chrétien back in the day. The Mark Kielburger won some contest with Heinz vinegar and got his thing put on their vinegar bottle. So that's a weird connection back over to the Heinz company and the Carey family. There's Lloyd Axworthy. Lloyd Axworthy met with Craig Kielburger right as soon as he came back from a trip when he was 13 years old to Nepal, Pakistan, and India, where he allegedly went without his parents under the guidance of a Bangladeshi 25-year-old to go on raids into factories and farms to save enslaved children. Can you believe it? That's a whirlwind tour of the origin story and current scandal surrounding We Charity. And in this video, I'm mainly going to be focusing on the people you see here because they're very similar in some ways. There's a common thread between all those people that relate back to the We Charity guys, and that common thread is sexual abuse. It seems to have nothing to do with it. It seems to come out of left field, but for anybody following along, anybody involved in the Great Awakening, anybody involved in, what would you call it, in citizen journalism, a major focus of our investigations seems to always come back around to child trafficking and child exploitation. And unbelievably, this We Charity thing has those same elements in it. So I'm going to look at that. Let's start by looking at a blog I thought I would never quote to you all. Canadaland. Jaron Kerr at Canadaland wrote Inside the Cult of Kielburger on June 25th, 2019. When you go to work for We Charities, apparently, according to the employees, the employee must agree that both while working for the organization and after leaving it, they, quote, shall not make, post, or publish derogatory comments or opinions about We or its representatives in any form whatsoever. And that gag order, writes Jaron Kerr, has no expiry date. The contract laid out financial consequences for violations. It held the employee's heirs and successors liable should the employee die after breaking the terms. Wow, that is some serious secrecy they want to swear you to here at We Charity. That level of secrecy makes me suspicious, but of course, when you run an outfit like We Charity that basically is two motivational speakers trying to bring in the youth, reputation is everything. They virtue signal so hard and they put on such a good show that they can trade on that alone. Okay, let's look at this Cult of Kielburger article a little deeper. It describes that the people who they brought in to work there were very young. Some of them probably were trained all through high school, maybe grade school and high school, into this We Charity mentality, right? With all of those packages that We Charity put into 17,000 schools across Canada, by the way. So they were ready when they got there for the culture. And the culture was very cult-like. They describe in this article that many of the employees were housed in We Toronto's properties that they owned. And the burnout and attrition rates were very high. Their lifestyles were precarious because they had demanding work schedules and low pay. When they complained about anything, they were told basically, like, you have it a lot better than the starving students in Africa, and if we gave any more money to you, we wouldn't be able to donate it to the cause. You see, they're pulling on that sense of giving yourself over for the greater good, which they trained the kids up with all through school, and which they trade on in their motivational speeches. A couple of former employees told the author that they would joke with each other about the irony of an organization that works to combat child slavery having such a problem with young, underpaid employees. Yeah, it is an irony. And if you look back at the origin story for how Craig Kielburger supposedly got the idea to start his original charity, you find out that that's exactly what it was. He said that he ran across a story in a newspaper in 1995 about a little boy in Pakistan who had been killed fighting to free child slaves. And oddly, at 13, his mom and dad let him go to Bangladesh, Thailand, Nepal, India, and Pakistan with a 25-year-old friend of the family, a Bangladeshi. Took him over there and took him on raids. And then he formed the organization Free the Children, which in turn funded other organizations which raided factories and quarries in India to free children. But look what it says here. All too often, however, Kielburger discovered rescued children being resold back into slavery. So the charity changed direction. They phased out their slave rescue work. The charity began school construction in Nicaragua, Kenya, Ecuador, and India. Those efforts received a major boost in October 1999 when Oprah Winfrey pledged to build schools with Kielburger. Here she is here. Here's his little angelic face superimposed beside her sort of wicked-looking face. Now listen to this. This is from 2008. For a group of students from North America, African rituals can create a bit of culture shock. Before the O ambassadors could begin building the Kenyan village of Elerai, the locals performed a goat sacrifice to bless the land on which the schools would reside. A goat sacrifice. Not only goat sacrifices, but hey, how about we drink some blood too?
The milk, it is very, very fresh here, but on top of that, blood. They pierce the neck of the cow, put it into a gourd, and Oh, it's great. Do you want to try some at home? Good stuff.
Hey, what could be more progressive than making goat sacrifices and blood drinking cool again? Thank you to @STesla and @Tons1999 who sent me this blood drinking clip. Interesting that they're exposing kids to things like that. Oprah's charities have not been without scandal. For example, here is an ABC News article from 2011 talking about a dead newborn found at one of the schools in Johannesburg. This is Johannesburg, South Africa. Oprah Winfrey's School for Girls in South Africa is being rocked by a fresh scandal. Winfrey's Leadership Academy has had problems in the past. Shortly after the all-girls high school opened in 2007, a school matron was charged with sexually molesting several girls. At the time, Winfrey flew to South Africa to offer a personal apology to the students and their parents. Apparently, the headmistress was acquitted of all the charges. Oprah said she was very disappointed in that. One of the spokespeople for refugees for the We charity is Rita Ora. Here's an article about it here. It just so happens that Rita Ora is the actress in this picture with Oprah Winfrey and Harvey Weinstein. It's just a strange link. They're all involved with the same charity. And of course, we know what happened with Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too movement. And he is now, I believe, serving a jail sentence for that. But abuse is cyclical. And that's a theme that comes up in this video quite a bit. Oprah, I was raped when I was only 9. Very sad. Is that what leads to decisions like these where it doesn't end up being very positive for the women and girls that you get involved with? I don't know. Somebody else famous that speaks with We Charity and is apparently quite a good friend of Craig Kielburger is this guy Jacob Hogard, I don't know how to say his name. He's from a band, Headley, in Canada. He's been charged with sexual assault of a girl under age 16. We Day organization says they are no longer working with this guy. I'm just saying, there's a pattern of sexual predation. And whether it's that some people have very bad judgment or this is the nature of charities, I don't know. So I decided to look into the background, the family background of the Kielburgers. And at first I found the scandal about the real estate. The parents who are both supposed to be just secondary school teachers in the public system, the Catholic public system, have multi-million dollar real estate properties all over the place. So that seemed unlikely. Shout out to Pedro who sent me the Jean Vanier Fred Kielburger link via email. That made a big difference to this video, so thank you. Here's Craig Kielburger writing about his father and what inspired his father. Lessons my father learned from Jean Vanier. He talks about his father showing up at Jean Vanier's doorstep in France. It's north of Paris, when he was in his 20s. My dad was on his way to becoming a teacher when he decided to spend his summer in Europe. When he heard of a Canadian who was looking to build a new type of community in France, Dad knocked on his door as much for a place to crash for a few nights as a desire to get involved. My dad set up residence in Vanier's office, sleeping on the couch. Most mornings, Vanier's mother greeted Dad with a kiss on both cheeks. This was the first L'Arche community. Today, there are more than 150 communities in 38 countries around the world that provide an alternate model integrating people on the margins. I don't know if you've heard of Jean Vanier and L'Arche. This is a program for people with developmental disabilities, and from what I know, it has a fairly good reputation. Come to find out, just a couple of months after Craig Kielburger wrote that glowing review of Jean Vanier and his father's residence with him in France, this happens. Founder of French charity is accused of pattern of abuse. The French-based charity L'Arche International revealed that its founder Jean Vanier had engaged in manipulative sexual relationships with women from 1970 to 2005. This is February 23rd, 2020, the article came out. So, just 6 months later. In this Irish Times article, who was L'Arche founder Jean Vanier? He was actually born in Switzerland in 1928, son of Georges Vanier. Georges Vanier ended up being Canada's Governor General. In Canada, the Queen ostensibly selects the Governor General, and she selected him. Probably, maybe, because Georges Vanier had escorted Princess Elizabeth in 1947 to South Africa. He was on the Navy team that accompanied the British royal family back then. It was Georges Vanier, Jean Vanier's father, who introduced Jean to this guy called Father Thomas Philippe, right here. Thomas Philippe became Vanier's teacher and mentor. Father Thomas Philippe, it ends up, was an abuser as well. Now, the Vatican had kicked him out, and they forbade him to carry out his pastoral ministry. However, he was taken in by a Dominican brotherhood, and he ministered to the mentally ill. Jean Vanier went and met him there, visited with him. That's where Jean Vanier got the idea to create L'Arche International. And they were friends. They remained working together in a friendship relationship on their projects all the way through. So now we have two priests who were molesters, who had used spiritual and psychological manipulation to rape, to coerce women into having sex with them in a very creepy way. Jean Vanier is pictured here with Mother Teresa when he was younger. And I don't know if you know this, but Mother Teresa is accused of running a baby trafficking operation. People don't like to hear that, but that's the accusation now coming out of India. Back to Jean Vanier. Brenda O'Brien says, there is something particularly vile about Jean Vanier. And she says, how appalling it must have been for his victims to hear him referred to continually as a living saint. Yes. Well, the people who were in the We Charity that came forward and talked about the cult-like atmosphere of working there at the We Foundation, they said the same thing. They said, these guys are rock stars. These guys are written about worldwide as heroes and humanitarians. They're so respected. They hang around with celebrities and politicians. They have huge money in the bank. So the people with complaints working for them were intimidated to come forward. Just like how it would have been with the women who were coerced into sex/raped by Jean Vanier. He was also looked at that way. So I find it very interesting that there's these parallels. And Craig Kielburger's father lived with Jean Vanier in the very first Arche community in Paris, France. I don't know. It's just something to think about. The Dominican order has questions to answer. Vanier's mentor, Father Thomas Philippe, received severe censure for his predatory activities in 1956 and yet was back counseling both men and women in the early 1960s. How was that allowed to happen? She closes her article by saying, serial predators such as Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein are disgusting, but there is something particularly vile about religious people who abuse, especially under the guise of spiritual direction. maybe that's true. And it certainly is for people who have faith and people who are spiritual and people who turn to the church for guidance. But as we have changed from a faith-based culture into this secular humanist type culture, a faithless culture, an atheist culture, I believe the same can be said about people who are abused by those champions of this secular humanism, of this communitarianism. And I would say that the We Charity Foundation and all these foundation leaders, they qualify for that. And I believe, honestly, that these priests, that there was an insurgency into the Catholic Church, especially after Vatican II, but beginning before that, where they warped and changed the whole culture of the church on purpose for this reason, so that people would blame the traditions of faith, such as celibacy, for the perversions and the abuses of the priests. I think that that's what happened, and I think it was meant to make people abandon the church and abandon faith. And I think that, as we can see now with the current pope, it is almost fully progressive now, secular humanist now, one world religion now. And here's an interesting link between Jean Vanier and this transition to this new world that they've built. In 2015, Jean Vanier was awarded the John Templeton Foundation Prize. So he was actually given £1.1 million and this medallion. Look at this medallion, would you? Try to remember it. I'm going to show you a little bit about what's on the homepage right now of John Templeton Foundation. They hope to accelerate progress. They will support exploration of the nature of religious belief and practice. They want to do research that could shape how we think about human existence. They want to ask whether certain virtues such as gratitude, curiosity, humility contribute to human flourishing, and more. They're very transhumanist. Look at this: nudging empathy, harnessing motivation to create sustainable empathic choices. Translation: how to talk people into doing not what's good for them, but what's good for the whole. Here they say they want to study communication between the brain and the male reproductive tract in mammals. I don't know if you saw my video the other day about science since World War II and the links between Maxwell and Epstein. I talked about that. I talked about the cybernetic control of people, the eugenic control of evolution, self-directed evolution. Do you remember? And the three big ones for them were mortality, fertility, and migration. And once again, we have them looking at, obviously, fertility here. The communication between the male brain and the male reproductive tract in mammals? Creepy. Remember I said to take a good look at this medal. I said that because it reminds me, once again, of the eugenics tree. Doesn't that have a feeling of that? Knotted in this strange, almost, dare I say it, swastika-like shape. And of course we have one of the big, the daddy now of scientific journals, Elsevier, with the same sort of tree. Remember how this woman was commenting that Jeffrey Epstein is disgusting, but Jean Vanier is particularly disgusting because he's religious? Well, the new religion is science. And it's interesting she picked Epstein because I've done at least these videos, plus I think a few more, on Epstein and his weird science investments, and how John Brockman is the leader of the popularizing of this weird science. They call them secular humanists, progressive, technocrats, cyberneticists, atheists, Satanists. They are all eugenicists. They try to replace God with their inverted religion, and all of them want to control evolution. Why is sexual abuse part of this? But it is. I'm going to tell you, everything I've researched says that childhood sexual abuse or other childhood trauma is key to creating this new evolution of man that is easily controlled, that doesn't have faith, that can sacrifice themselves to the point of becoming a guinea pig for experimental vaccines voluntarily, and to do all manner of other things that are bad. The person I would recommend that you go learn from about this link between childhood sexual trauma and mind control is Kathy O'Brien. She wrote Transformation of America and a few other books. She's a major whistleblower in this arena, and I believe she's helped to change the world with her story. Here she is on Twitter at @RealKathyO'Brien, if you want to find her there. But you can Google her. You'll probably find her video giving her testimony about what she went through. I've got to warn you, if you're new to it, it's extremely shocking. And at first, even I found it very difficult to take seriously. But as the years have gone by, there's almost no doubt. All right, so we've looked at this half, and we've looked at some of these people here. But I want to bring you over to Justin Trudeau and his really bizarre connections. Justin Trudeau is important to this story because it's possible that he himself has been traumatized to the point where he is under some sort of mind control. I don't know if you've ever heard him speak, but he is like a robot. One good thing to watch is his anything he does in front of a whole team of reporters. He sounds like a total robot. But go watch his eulogy of his father. When Pierre Trudeau died and Justin Trudeau gave a eulogy, it is one seriously bizarre thing. He's surrounded by people who are sexual predators. I'm going to talk about 4 of them here. And we'll start with Ben Levin. He was the Ontario Deputy Minister of Education. He is a convicted pedophile. He helped to design the sex ed curriculum. And he was found with absolutely disgusting child porn on his computer, and apparently, well, I won't go into it. You can read the article here. I'll link to it. But Deputy Education Minister, distinguished U of T professor, on top of the world, making close to 50 speeches a year about the transformation of education. Yet again, going for the youth. There's a pattern here. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Christopher Ingvaldson, who was also a teacher, also convicted of having child porn, and apparently it was part of a much bigger online child exploitation ring with connections in Canada, Australia, and the UK that operated on Facebook. That was 9 years ago. And he was Justin Trudeau's one-time roommate. I don't know if Trudeau was ever looked into over that. Probably not. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Peter Dalglish. Peter Dalglish was, I believe he worked with the UN, but he started out with his own Street Kids Foundation and charity. Peter went to a very upper crust school called Upper Canada College, and he and his buddies were going to go to Thailand and help street kids, he decided. Listen to this story. Where did this philanthropic streak come from? After articling at Dalhousie Law School, Peter was poised to make a lot of money, drive a BMW, and have all the other nice legal trappings. But something happened. The Ethiopian famine came along. Peter decided to organize and accompany an airlift of food and medical supplies to Africa. He spent the last 2 weeks of 1984 in a refugee camp with 25,000 children in the Ogaden refugee camp on the Somali-Ethiopian border. He then decided that perhaps the world didn't need another corporate lawyer. In the new year, Peter went back to Canada, where he was clerking with Stewart, McKean and Covert, one of the largest firms in eastern Canada. But 3 days after being called to the bar, he set to work in Sudan, monitoring food distribution in the most remote area of the country. Yeah, it's always the same kind of story, except for, of course, he was found guilty of molesting these children. And I believe he's in jail now. But he was really good buddies with Trudeau and thought of very highly by the international community. Now we're going to look at the pièce de résistance, John Seeley, who ran something called the Forest Hill Project. This paper was written by Paul Roberts Bentley, and it's all about the Forest Hill Village Project run by John R. Seeley. I'll read this page. This is the history of a mental health project conducted in the schools of Forest Hill, Ontario during the 1950s. Its original name was the Forest Hill Village Project, but it became famous in history as Crestwood Heights. The Forest Hill Village Project was a significant event in Canadian history, not only as part of the first mental health grants ever issued by the federal government, but also as the first major attempt to address the mental health needs of children in school. Hatched at the highest levels of military planning during the Second World War, Forest Hill Village Project would involve senior government and university administrators, as well as psychiatrists, social workers, and teachers from across Canada in an experiment in psychoanalytic pedagogy. It was because of Seeley's genius that a mental health revolution from the top down was attempted in Canadian history, and it was because of his own psychological issues that it failed. The martyrdom, he says, of John R. Seeley did not consist simply in the irony of his own fall into mental illness while leading a mental health project in the schools of Forest Hill, but also in his being effectively banished from Canadian society because of his efforts. Yeah. Did you notice the dates? By the way, I have to point this out. 1948 to 1956. As I argued in my Maxwell-Epstein science and control since World War II video. Ever since World War II, they've been trying to socially engineer us through psychology and through other manipulation techniques. This was one of those examples. You saw right there, it came from the highest levels of the Canadian military. It was the first mental health grant. The guy running it went insane. In fact, much of this has been purged. It's almost impossible to find this information anymore, but it is said that he was a pedophile. So what was he doing in those schools with the boys all those years? And here's the kicker. John R. Seeley knew Pierre Trudeau and counseled him after he was left as a single father with Justin. Justin allegedly was under the care of this man, John R. Seeley, who now we know went insane and was probably, almost certainly, a pedophile. One wonders what really went on there. One more thing about this before I move to the next little part. Another guy who benefited from Canadian government mental health grants at the same time under the same program was Ewan Cameron. And Ewan Cameron is an MK Ultra doctor. MK Ultra was a military CIA mind control experiment program. And that's what Kathy O'Brien talks about. MK Ultra, Project Monarch, there's a bunch of sub-projects involved in it. Cameron went on to become the founder or the first president of the American Psychiatric Association and the Canadian Psychiatric Association. You can see where it all went wrong, can't you? Why did they do this? Because they want total control of the population. You can see in this definition of communism, bear with me for a second. The benefits of communism. Key points. Communist ideology advocates universal education with a focus on developing the proletariat with knowledge, class consciousness, and historical understanding. Communist ideology emphasizes the development of a new man. Well, what were they trying to do? And what is George Soros trying to do? Here's his Open Society magazine from 2009. It says that the Open Society Institute assumed that within 2 decades we could help create a new open society man. This new man, Homo Sorosensis, he named it after himself. What a crazy lunatic. Look, I'm not making excuses for George Soros when I say this, but it's worth pointing out that he too was traumatized as a child. He was Jewish, he had to hide his Jewishness, and he worked with the Nazis confiscating Jewish property. As he told Steve Croft in 60 Minutes interview and has talked about often. He says that it was a formative experience and that he doesn't have a problem with it. That's what he says now. But how do children cope with such trauma? That's the key. That's the key to this MK Ultra programming. They compartmentalize. They make excuses for it. They turn bad into good. And isn't that what we're noticing now? Good is bad, bad is good. The world is inverted. And I think early childhood trauma is the reason why. Homo saurosensis would replace Homo sovieticus. And he called this the new normal, open society. This new open society man and woman would be committed to democracy and the rule of law, exhibit civic courage when necessary, be respectful, not just tolerant, of minorities, support socially equitable markets, and be a good European while remaining a responsible global citizen. This paragraph is extraordinary. You should stop and read the whole thing. The new open society man and woman would gradually displace the old elite and contribute to the stabilization of market and democratic institutions in a new Europe. Oh, that sounds great. Boy, I can't wait till you get your stable market, George, and we're all just automatons. That sounds awesome. But it brings me back to We Charity and their service learning program, a new pedagogy, this service learning. It's much more than simply volunteerism. Students who participate in service learning within the We Schools framework apply their academic learning to real-life settings and situations by being active in meaningful community-based service. Yeah, like working 16-hour days for less than minimum wage while living in the company buildings, unable to quit because you can't afford it. Like that. And to make sure that it's not just in school that these messages are getting through, We Charity has We 365, which is an app you can put on your phone. With our recently upgraded functionality and exciting new features, We 365 makes changing the world super easy and fun. Yeah, because they'll just message you constantly and nag you and harass you and direct you and guilt you and shame you until you are a perfect little bot. You know how schools are closed right now? Well, we did not want to miss out on any opportunities. So they have got We at Home initiative. Hey, provide families and K-12 students with daily lesson plans delivered right to the parents' inboxes. It's cost-free and easy to use. These offerings emphasize social-emotional learning. Yeah, forget math, forget geography, forget important hard learning things. We want social emotional learning. We're going to groom you the whole way so that once you work for a company that asks too much of you and demands too much of your time and doesn't reward you highly enough and berates you if you question them, we're going to groom you all the way through school so that you think that's normal service to humanity and you don't even notice that you have overlords worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Does it remind you of anything? Does it remind you of how the Kielburgers supposedly started out wanting to end child labor and child slavery? Did they want to end it, or did they want to teach people how to love it? Because from where I'm sitting, that's what they've done. Now, here's the unbelievable twist. Remember John R. Seeley? I told you about he's the guy that ran the Forest Hill Project and possibly groomed Justin Trudeau. Guess what he came from? He came to Canada on a special program, British Home Children. He is a British home child. What are the British home children? Well, we can learn that these are from the 1860s right up to 1948. Over 100,000 children of all ages were emigrating to Canada from the United Kingdom. Some of these British home children became known as Barnardo Homeboys, despite the fact that many came from other organizations. Well, what's Barnardo Homes, I wondered. When I looked it up, I came across Dr. Thomas Barnardo, and he was affiliated with this Ragged School program in the UK. The Ragged Schools taught street kids. They gathered up street kids, and they taught them supposedly useful skills. I don't know what they really taught them, but we find out that Charles Dickens, this was during Charles Dickens's time, he was a proponent of the ragged schools, the idea of it, but he was appalled by the conditions. He tried to help them reform the school. He would give them money. Here it says, at one point he donated funds along with a water trough, stating that it was so the boys may wash and so they could get a supervisor, because they were pretty wild, I guess. The kids were street urchins. They were filthy. They had bad clothing. The conditions in the schools were terrible. So this inspired Charles Dickens to write Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist, as you may know, is a story about how unscrupulous characters came along, basically groomed a bunch of kids that didn't have parents into a life of crime, into a life where they were basically the indentured servants of this crime organization. It just blows my mind that when you pull all the threads on the characters behind the We organization, you come all the way back to the problem they say they were trying to solve when they started, which is child labor and child slavery. All right, I will wrap up by just showing you the graphic one more time so you remember all the players. Here they are here. So the two common themes are working with underprivileged people and, unfortunately, perversion. Those are the two common themes to a lot of these guys. All the way up to the top of the leadership of countries. The corruption filters through and gets right up to the top. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop talking now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up and subscribe. Don't forget to go over to BitChute and subscribe to me there. 99 free mind on BitChute. If you would like to contribute to the work I've done, although these are very tough economic times, I can understand that. This may not be the time to make a donation. I just appreciate your letters and comments and thumbs up and subscriptions just as much. So, yeah, think about it carefully. But if you do find yourself in a position to contribute, you can go to paypal.me/PollySt. or you can send me something through the regular post to my post office box, the address of which will be found on my website, and I will link to that below. I will link to the references that I've used for this video in the description box as well, and I guess I will stop talking now. Until next time, everybody, peace out.